The first thing she did was knock over her champagne. The second was whisper my name. Not like someone remembering a long-lost lover, but like someone seeing a ghost they thought they buried in another life. And the third was fall to her knees. I didn't flinch. I just kept walking past her, right toward the executive lounge. The whole ballroom froze. Everyone was watching, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not after what she did. Not after what she made me become. You don't recover from that kind of betrayal. Not like they say you do in therapy books or Reddit advice threads. You survive it in pieces. You collect those pieces like broken glass from a floor no one else will sweep. And if you're lucky, you learn how to walk barefoot again without bleeding. 3 years ago, Madelyn Kane was the golden girl of Alturex Pharmaceuticals, lead brand strategist, boardroom darling, keynote speaker at every overpriced convention in Scottsdale or Berlin. The kind of woman who knew how to kill a pitch deck with one arched eyebrow. But in that moment, on that ballroom floor, gasping, shaking, clawing at her pearls like they were choking her, she looked like nothing more than a collapsed statue in a too bright museum. And me? I was the janitor who used to clean up after her. Let me rewind, not to our wedding day. I'm not giving you that cliché. This isn't a fairy tale gone wrong. This is a hostage story. And I was the idiot who locked the cage from the inside. The real beginning starts in a conference room in Houston. 4 years ago, Tuesday, 11:17 a.m., room 14B. Madelyn was presenting a rebrand for a drug I couldn't even pronounce. I wasn't supposed to be there. I only came because her assistant mixed up the calendar invite and accidentally included me. Everett Lindell, UI designer from the wellness app division Alturex, had quietly acquired the year before. I came because I thought it would be funny. Sit in the back. Watch my wife be brilliant. Feel proud for a moment in between coffee refills. But then she said it. Slide 5. Bold red letters. The old model is dead weight. It slows down innovation. And she gestured behind her. To the last slide. To me. Not by name. No. She was too smart for that. But the graphic? The app icon. It was mine. I laughed out loud. Literally laughed. Everyone turned. Her eyes met mine. Her face dropped. She hadn't known I was coming. She hadn't known I'd see her humiliate my entire division. Me? To sell her sleek new narrative of progress. That's the day I knew. She was done with me. Not just personally. Professionally. Socially. Romantically. I was dead weight. And the thing about being called dead weight by your own wife in front of C-suite execs and global partners? It doesn't kill you. It hollows you out. Like rot in the middle of a tree. You still look solid from the outside, but you're brittle. One hard gust, and you'll snap in half. After that, the rest happened fast. She got promoted. I got demoted. Our shared apartment turned into a dorm room with polite nods and separate wake times. She moved into a corporate suite in San Diego for long-term strategy rollout. I moved into a friend's garage. She told HR we'd agreed to separate, to focus on our careers. I told HR nothing, because I still believed if I waited long enough, she'd come back. She didn't. But Reese Connolly did. Vice President of Global Product Expansion. Divorced. Pilates arms. Smug enough to order scotch during lunch meetings. He and Madelyn started showing up at events together. He started wearing my suit jacket. I know because I saw the tailoring tag, Lindell Brothers, downtown LA. She gave him my life like it was an old coat she no longer needed. So I disappeared. Not dramatically. Not with a speech. I just left. Changed my number. Deleted every photo of her. Started over in New Mexico, coding sleep tracking algorithms for a wearable startup run by a bunch of 20-something burnout bros with standing desks and commitment issues. I didn't think I'd ever see her again. But then came the invitation. It wasn't addressed to me. It was sent to Everett Lindell, Director of UX, MindNest Incorporated. I almost deleted it. But then I saw the venue. The Terra Nova Gala. Alturex's biggest annual event. She'd be there. Of course she would. And suddenly, I wanted something I didn't know I still had in me. Closure. Or maybe something uglier. I didn't even want to drink that night. I didn't want to smile or network or listen to middle-aged executives make jokes about disrupting the wellness pipeline. I just wanted to see her see me. That was the whole goal. I didn't need to humiliate her. I just wanted her to know I still existed. That I didn't vanish. That I became something better without her. Maybe that's petty. Actually, no, that's absolutely petty. But when someone reduces you to a ghost, you don't want to come back as a better man. You want to come back as the haunting. The gala was a level of extravagance I hadn't seen in years. Velvet ropes, wall-to-wall marble, waiters holding champagne flutes with tongs. There was a harpist playing an acoustic version of a Drake song, and no one seemed to find that strange. The Alturex logo beamed in soft gold from behind a decorative waterfall, and everyone wore their success like armor. I blended in because I knew how to: tailored suit, new haircut, fake confidence. But inside, my stomach twisted like I was walking into a courtroom where I was both the defendant and the prosecution. I saw her before she saw me. Madelyn stood near the staircase, laughing with a group of executives, pearls layered down her neck like coiled snakes. Her hair was lighter, more professional, less spontaneous. She had the kind of glow you get when your life has been carefully curated for public consumption. And right next to her, clinging to her elbow like a parasite with an MBA, was Reese. His hand rested on her lower back like he owned her spine. They were the power couple. The merger everyone applauded but secretly despised. People walked up to them like pilgrims at a shrine. The way Madelyn nodded, tight, cold, sharp, was the same nod she used to give me when I brought her dinner during all-nighters. The nod of a woman who expected things, not appreciated them. So I waited. I sipped one drink, then another. Then I stepped closer. She turned her head casually, like people do when they're bored of small talk, and our eyes locked. Everything else around us evaporated. She froze. Her grip on Reese's arm slipped. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked me up and down like she couldn't decide if I was real or a projection of guilt. And then, just like that, her champagne slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. People turned. Cameras turned. And Madelyn, the indestructible, icy, PR-polished queen of the company, dropped to her knees and started sobbing. I didn't rush over. I didn't comfort her. I didn't even blink. I stood still and watched as Reese bent down, confused and trying to gather her like she was fragments of something expensive and broken. A woman I didn't recognize touched my arm and asked, "Do you know her?" I simply said, "Not anymore," and walked away. But here's the thing no one tells you. When your enemy breaks down, it doesn't always feel like victory. It can feel hollow. That moment, the one I thought I needed, it didn't fix me. It didn't erase the years she erased me. It just confirmed something worse. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd buried me alive. And now I was back, and she wasn't ready. But neither was I. Because 30 minutes later, as I waited near the valet stand to leave, a man in a charcoal suit approached me quietly, like he was delivering a threat wrapped in politeness. "Mr. Lindell," he said, "Miss Kane would like a word. In private." I stared at him, then glanced back at the glowing lobby of the gala. I don't know why I nodded, but I followed him. And that's when I realized this wasn't about closure. It was about secrets, and she wasn't the only one who had them. The room they led me to was nothing like the rest of the gala. No shimmering crystal. No polite laughter bouncing off the marble. It was tucked behind the banquet hall, through a narrow hallway I'm convinced most guests didn't even know existed. The kind of space they save for awkward HR conversations or legal fire drills. The man in the charcoal suit didn't follow me in. He just opened the door, nodded like a valet at a funeral, and vanished. Inside, she was waiting. Madelyn sat alone on a leather bench near the far wall, her face red but composed, like someone who had just torn through grief and stitched herself back together in a rush. The pearls were gone. Her hair was slightly frazzled, like she'd been tugging at it between sobs. Her heels were off. And yet, somehow, she still looked like the kind of woman who could get you fired with one well-phrased sentence. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The silence between us had weight. Not just emotional weight, but historical. There were things I hadn't said in 3 years that came roaring to the surface, things that burned the back of my throat. But before I could open my mouth, she beat me to it. "I thought you moved to Europe," she said, not looking at me. "Europe?" I blinked. "No, just New Mexico." She laughed, bitter and low. "Reese said he tracked your IP once. Said it pinged somewhere in Oslo." "Well," I shrugged. "Maybe someone in Oslo knows how to code sleep patterns." She finally looked up. And when she did, it wasn't the face of a villain or a monster or even the cold executive I'd seen hours before. It was just her. Older. Exhausted. But still her. "I wasn't supposed to see you tonight," she said quietly. I wasn't ready." "For what?" I asked. "For me to exist?" "No," she whispered. For me to feel like this again, that stopped me cold. Because it didn't sound like manipulation. It didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded real, which made it worse. I don't know what this even means, Madelyn. Regret? Guilt? Embarrassment in front of your CEO? Her voice cracked. Shame. And then she told me something I didn't expect. When I saw you earlier, I thought I was hallucinating. I've thought about this moment so many times. What I'd say, how I'd look, what I'd wear if I ever ran into you again. I imagined it happening in a bookstore or an airport or during some awkward client mixer in a city neither of us lived in anymore. But I didn't think. I'd feel like I lost my spine. I stayed silent. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was softened. But because I didn't know what the hell to say to a confession like that. She took a deep breath, then stood up slowly and walked toward me, barefoot on marble, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to run or collapse again. I made the worst decision of my life, she said. I left you for a future that didn't exist. Reese wasn't what I thought he was. And I wasn't either. I scoffed. You left me for a man who called UX design button art in an interview. I read the transcript. She actually smiled at that, the first real smile I'd seen from her since well before the divorce. Then she said something that shifted the floor beneath me. I think he knew. Knew what? That I wasn't over you. Now, let me explain something. I'm not the kind of man who believes in second chances. Not anymore. Once someone slices you open and watches you bleed, and then calmly walks away, it changes you. You build a new skin over those wounds. You become smarter, colder. You convince yourself that the old version of you deserved to die. So hearing her say that, it didn't feel like a romantic moment. It felt like an attack on the new version of myself I had finally learned to accept. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Why now, Madelyn? Why tell me this here? After 3 years? She hesitated, then said, because something's going to happen, and I need you to hear it from me first. I raised an eyebrow. Is this where you tell me you're dying or being investigated by the SEC? She didn't laugh. Instead, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded envelope. It was old, creased at the edges with faded ink, and it had my name on it. Not Everett Lindell. Not Mr. Lindell. Just Ev. I stared at it. Something inside me locked up. My fingers didn't move. What is this? She stepped closer and pressed the envelope into my hand. It's what I wrote the night before I left you. You mean the night you flew to San Diego to spend 3 weeks in Reese's corporate condo while telling me you were at a leadership seminar? She flinched. Yes, that night. I looked at the envelope like it was radioactive. Why didn't you give this to me then? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Because I was too much of a coward. And with that, she walked out. No more begging. No more breakdown. Just the sound of her heels in her hand and the door shutting behind her. I stared at the envelope for a long, long time. And I swear, for a second, I thought about tearing it in half. But I didn't. Because I knew, deep down, that whatever was inside that letter wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I sat in my car with the engine running for 27 minutes before I opened the envelope. I didn't drive. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't even touch my phone. Just sat there, staring at the thin paper like it was some kind of unexploded device. Part of me hoped it was empty. Another part hoped it would hurt. At least then I'd feel something that made sense. When I finally tore the flap open, I expected cliches. Some pseudo-poetic nonsense about growing apart or falling out of alignment, like we were planets instead of people. But what I found was far worse. Ev, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't face you the way you deserved. And I'm sorry for that. Cowardice wears lipstick and smiles and talks about clarity, but it's still cowardice. You didn't do anything wrong. You were good. Maybe too good. And I know what that sounds like, some cheap line, but it's the truth. I didn't leave because you failed me. I left because I didn't know how to live with someone who never needed saving. I needed chaos. I needed to feel like I was climbing out of something to feel alive. And you? You were already whole. Steady. Real. You cooked. You held me when I had nothing to say. You folded my insecurities into blankets and gave them names like rest and trust. But I didn't want rest. I wanted a storm. And then came Reese. And he wasn't better. He was just louder. He mirrored all the noise I carried inside. I didn't realize how quiet love was until I left it. There's one more thing. Something you don't know. Something no one knows. I found out I was pregnant. A week before I walked out. It wasn't his. It was yours. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make you stay. And by the time I was ready to face it, I wasn't pregnant anymore. I lost everything in a matter of months. And I deserved every second of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know, you were never the problem. I don't remember finishing the letter. I don't remember folding it. I just remember that when I looked up, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. My chest burned, not like heartbreak, not like betrayal, but like grief. Grief for a version of myself that might have become a father. Grief for a life that died without a name. She was pregnant, and she never told me, and it wasn't his. For 3 years, I had carried the weight of abandonment like it was my own fault. Like I wasn't ambitious enough, spontaneous enough, rich enough, Reese enough. But now I had to carry something worse. The knowledge that I had been a father, if only briefly, and that the child, my child, had been buried under her shame and silence. I drove to the first bar I could find and ordered something I hadn't touched since college, bottom-shelf whiskey, neat. It tasted like regret. I sat in the corner, hunched over like a man watching his own funeral. She had destroyed me once. But this felt different. This was not destruction. This was a slow, cruel, calculated incision into a wound I didn't know was still open. And then, as if summoned by the universe's sixth sense of humor, Reese Connolly walked in. Not with Madelyn. Alone. Still in his gala tux. Loose and tie. Talking too loudly into a Bluetooth earpiece like a man who thinks he's the main character in every room. I couldn't help myself. I stood up. He saw me. And I swear to God, the smirk on his face was instant. Like he'd been waiting for this moment for years. Like he wanted it. Everett, he said, pulling out his earpiece mid-sentence. Didn't know you were still haunting the same cities. I didn't respond. Rough night, he added, nodding at my drink. Or just reminiscing about all the things you fumbled? Still, I said nothing. He sat down, without asking. You know, he said, leaning forward like a school bully in a private lunchroom. Madelyn's been off her game lately. Emotional. Jumpy. Pretty sure seeing you cracked something in her. I looked him in the eye cold. You ever wonder, I said, what it feels like to be the consolation prize? He blinked. I continued. You weren't her chaos. You were her punishment. He chuckled. A dry, condescending sound. She didn't leave you for me, Everett. She left you for the version of herself she couldn't face. I just happened to be standing there when the match got lit. I should have hit him. Maybe I would have 3 years ago. But I didn't. I just stared. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He knew about the pregnancy. He hadn't said it. But his eyes, they gave it away. That smug look. Not surprised, not curious, but aware. And suddenly, the room got colder. Because if he knew, then Madelyn hadn't just lied to me. She'd lied to him, too. And someone, maybe him, had made sure that baby never arrived. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed in my cheap hotel room, still fully dressed, staring at the envelope that now felt radioactive in my hands. Every time I read Madelyn's letter, a different sentence hit me like a brick. But one line wouldn't leave me alone. By the time I was ready to face it, I wasn't pregnant anymore. What did that mean exactly? Miscarriage? Termination? It wasn't that I needed to know. It was that something didn't sit right. If she was too ashamed to tell me, why write it all down in a letter she never gave me? And if she did give it to me now, after all this time, then what changed? Why tell me at all if she wanted me gone? Unless she didn't. Unless she was trying to unburden herself or warn me. The idea festered all night. The kind of thought that grows teeth and claws and burrows into your skull. By morning, I had made a decision I never thought I'd make again. I was going back into the lion's den. I still had an old contact at Alturex, a quiet, awkward systems engineer named Martin Griggs. He was the kind of guy who only spoke in code and caffeine, and used to joke that my marriage was the company's longest-running AIB test. We hadn't spoken in almost 4 years, but I still had his number. I called him. No small talk. Just, I need to see something. Something off the record. There was a pause. Then Martin's signature nasal voice, flat as ever. I assume this is about Madelyn. I froze. Why would you assume that? Because she's been asking around for you. All week. Quietly. What kind of asking? The kind that leaves a trail. I met him 2 hours later in a cafe with bad lighting and worse coffee. He looked thinner, jitterier, like someone who had stopped blinking properly around 2020. But he had something for me, a thumb drive. I shouldn't even be giving you this, he muttered, glancing around like we were in some Cold War movie. I didn't pull it from her device. I pulled it from his. Reese. Martin nodded. She sent him a file last year. Encrypted. Labeled with your name. I cloned it before he deleted it from the server. My blood ran cold. He deleted it? Right after he downloaded it. Not a trace left. Not unless you know where to look. I slipped the drive into my pocket like it was a weapon. Back in the hotel, I opened it on a burner laptop. The folder inside had one file. A video. No metadata. Just a timestamp. March 19th, 2022. The day I thought I was interviewing for a remote contract in Seattle. I hit play. The video was grainy, like it was shot on a low-end security camera or someone's old tablet. It opened on an office, sleek, sterile, corporate. A woman sat in the corner, wearing a dark blazer and looking down at a clipboard. Her face was partially obscured, but the voice was unmistakable. Madelyn, I'm not here to file a formal report, she was saying. I'm just here to make a record of what happened, in case something goes wrong later. The camera angle didn't shift. Her hands trembled in her lap. Then she said it. I'm 6 weeks pregnant. It's Everett's. He doesn't know. I didn't tell him. And Reese doesn't know either. I wanted to stay that way. I don't trust him. Silence. She looked around, then leaned closer to the mic. I know what people think of me. That I moved on fast. That I traded comfort for ambition. But there are things no one sees. Things I've found out that scare me. She exhaled shakily. There's a project. Off the books. Something involving preclinical data manipulation. Reese is spearheading it. I don't have all the details, but I found a file. It referenced patient trials, and then Everett's name. My heart stopped. What kind of data would include me? She kept talking. I don't think Everett's in danger, not directly. But I think he was used. Something about his design work on the old health app. It got pulled into a protocol without his knowledge. I tried to flag it, but the emails disappeared. HR won't respond. Legal said I was being paranoid. Now they're freezing me out. She looked directly into the camera. If anything happens to me, or the baby, start with Reese. The video cut off. No sign-off. No thank you. Just black. I sat frozen for a full 5 minutes. The room felt too quiet. My pulse in my ears was louder than the traffic outside. I played the video again. Watched her face. Paused it at every frame where she looked directly into the camera. She looked scared. Not sad. Scared. That wasn't a love confession. That was a warning. And suddenly, everything started to shift in my mind. What if this wasn't just about a broken marriage? What if it wasn't even about betrayal? What if this was a cover-up? A distraction? What if Reese didn't just seduce her? What if he silenced her? What if he wanted the pregnancy to disappear? And worst of all, what if I was involved the entire time, without even knowing? The strange thing about discovering your entire life was part of a hidden project is that it doesn't hit all at once. It trickles. At first, it's disbelief. Then paranoia. Then a cold, slow-burning rage that simmers beneath everything you do. Every word, every glance, every breath. You start questioning moments that used to feel innocent. You rewind conversations in your head, noticing pauses that were too long, smiles that were too tight, questions that weren't just curiosity, but data collection. I didn't go to the police. I knew better. You don't march into a precinct with a thumb drive full of video files from a pharmaceutical executive and expect anything except a patronizing pamphlet and maybe a wellness check. If what Madelyn said in that recording was real, if Reese was orchestrating a black ops trial using stolen behavioral data, then I needed to understand what they used me for. Why me? Why the quiet husband folding gym clothes in the background? So I went back to the beginning. Back to the last product I worked on at Alturex, the SleepPath integration module. It was meant to interface with wearable devices and track not just sleep cycles, but subconscious emotional triggers, dreams, microtremors, reaction to audio patterns during REM. It was cutting edge, ambitious, unstable. I didn't build the sensor side, just the interface logic. But I remembered getting pushback from the product team on one particular feature, passive auditory response tracking. I had flagged it back then, said it was invasive, said there were too many privacy issues. They told me it was disabled in the live build, that it only existed in the sandbox environment. They lied. I logged into the old dev server from my hotel room, using credentials I hadn't touched in years. To my surprise, no one had revoked them. Classic corporate oversight. Or maybe someone left it open on purpose. And there it was, buried inside an archived testing branch. Protocol, Theta G. I opened the file tree. It wasn't labeled clearly, not with real names. Just strings of ID numbers, dates, and activity logs. But I recognized my own coding style immediately. I had touched these files, built the triggers, but not all of them. Some had been modified after I left the company, without my signature. Someone had restructured my code to behave differently in the live environment. I dug deeper. The logs contained timestamps, geolocation markers, and then audio files. The first one was short, just 10 seconds. I hit play. "You've been quiet lately, Ev." It was Madelyn's voice, soft, from our bedroom. I remembered that night. I was lying in bed, trying to ignore how distant she'd become, but I didn't know I was being recorded. Second file. "Do you think people can be programmed without knowing it?" That wasn't her voice. That was mine. And suddenly, I understood. They weren't tracking users. They were tracking me. Not a test user. Not a developer. The subject. I was the prototype. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I nearly cracked the hinge. My lungs felt like they'd shrunk inside my chest. I stumbled into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror, trying to remember every single moment that felt off in that last year with Madelyn. Every mood swing. Every argument that started without context. Every time I woke up in the middle of the night, sweating, hearing whispers I thought were just part of dreams. They weren't dreams. They were tests. Madelyn had said in the recording that I wasn't in danger, that she thought I was just being used. But now I wasn't so sure. This wasn't just behavioral analysis. It was manipulation. Someone was altering my emotional rhythms, nudging me toward reactions, pushing me to collapse, maybe even sabotage myself. And she knew. She knew. And she left anyway. And then I remembered what she'd said to me at the gala. I wasn't ready to feel like this again. She hadn't broken down because she missed me. She broke down because she saw what I became after they finished testing me. I paced the room for what felt like hours. My thoughts were spiraling. The line between memory and programming was blurring. Was my breakdown after the divorce real? Or engineered? Did I really fall apart because of heartbreak? Or because they built a trigger into my grief? And then a sickening thought slithered in. The baby. What if that wasn't just an unfortunate accident? What if that pregnancy interfered with the protocol? What if they didn't want Madelyn to stay? What if Reese made her leave, not for love, but to isolate the subject? To isolate me. I needed answers. Real ones. Not guesses. Not flashbacks. Not theories. I grabbed my coat and called Martin. He picked up on the third ring. "I need access to the internal audit logs," I said. "Already sent them," he replied. He paused. "Everett," he added. "You should know. She tried to pull her exit file from the archive 2 weeks ago. Before the gala." "Her what?" "Her final report. She tried to delete it." "Did she?" "No. But someone else did." "Guess who?" My mouth went dry. "Reese." "Bingo. What was in the file?" Martin sighed. "If what I saw is right, she tried to blow the whistle, right before she disappeared from the San Diego office. It was detailed. Disappeared? She didn't just transfer out. She vanished." I stood frozen, phone pressed to my ear. "Everett," Martin said carefully, "you're not the only thing she walked away from." And just like that, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't the only one she tried to protect. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't done trying. I didn't tell Martin where I was going next. I didn't ask for backup or legal advice or a breadcrumb trail in case I disappeared too. I just packed the drive, the printouts, and Madelyn's letter into a folder, shoved it under my arm, and drove to the only place I swore I'd never step foot in again, the Alteryx Executive Tower in downtown LA. Security had changed. New faces. Stricter protocols. But all it took was a stolen QR badge from a forgotten email attachment and the confidence of a man with nothing left to lose. I walked in like I still belonged there, like I wasn't dragging a grenade under my coat. And I walked straight into his office. Reese Connolly didn't even look surprised to see me. He was alone. No assistant. No entourage. Just him, standing at the window, sipping from a glass tumbler that probably cost more than my first car. "You're persistent," he said without turning around. "No," I replied, stepping inside. "I'm finally awake." He turned slowly, eyeing the folder in my hand like it was a weapon, which, to be fair, it was. "I saw the logs," I continued. "Theta G, sleep path. The modifications. The recording Madelyn made. The protocol that used me as a testing bed. You implanted auditory conditioning in the app and targeted me through your own employee's private home. He chuckled, calm as always. You really should have gone into strategy, Everett. You'd make a hell of a storyteller. I dropped the folder on his desk. Papers spilled across the glass, screenshots, metadata, Madelyn's signature, timestamps, my own code, rewritten and recompiled under a different contributor ID. He glanced at the chaos in front of him, then leaned back in his chair. I'm not denying it. The audacity knocked the wind out of me. I had prepared for gaslighting, deflection, threats, not indifference. You manipulated my neural data without my consent. You monitored me, day and night. You orchestrated emotional breakdowns for analytics. And, he said, that one word, empty, cold, nearly made me leap across the desk. She was pregnant. That finally broke his rhythm. His jaw shifted. I know she told you. I continued. I saw the video. I read the letter. She didn't trust you. She tried to blow the whistle. You buried her report. You rewrote the logs. You erased her. Reese put the glass down. She erased herself. She couldn't handle what she helped create. You think she was innocent? She was part of Theta G from day one. Your name, your role, it wasn't an accident. She volunteered you. I blinked. That's a lie. He slid open a drawer and pulled out a printed project charter. Page 1. Subject 0001, E. Lindell. Approved by M. Kane. I staggered back like I'd been hit. That wasn't her approval, I whispered. She was pressured. You forged it. Reese shrugged. Believe what makes you sleep better. But I couldn't sleep anymore. Not after seeing that. Not after realizing the woman I loved. The one who cried at the gala, who collapsed under the weight of what she'd done, had not only walked away from me. She may have offered me up. For the first time, I didn't know who I hated more, him or her. I'm going public, I said, voice shaking. This folder? It's already been duplicated. I've sent copies to legal firms, former employees, whistleblower channels. Even if something happens to me, it won't go away. He stood up slowly. You think this story will survive the first round of edits? You're a ghost, Everett. You left this company 3 years ago. No one will believe you. You have no title, no clearance, no reputation. You're just another disgruntled ex-husband with a conspiracy theory. Then why do you look so nervous? I asked. He didn't answer. I walked out. No one stopped me, not even the front desk. The drive was quiet. No music. Just the soft thrum of tires and the cold echo of the truth unraveling in my hands. Madelyn's name on the charter haunted me. I wanted to rip the paper in half. I wanted to believe she didn't know, that she wasn't involved. But what Reese said kept repeating in my head. She volunteered you. If it was true, even partly true, then everything I believed about her, about us, was a lie. Was the pregnancy real? Was it a fluke? Or was it part of the design? And what happened after? The miscarriage, the silence, the disappearance. Was that grief or strategy? Back at the hotel, I stared at the envelope again. The one she'd given me at the gala. I reread the final paragraph. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know, you were never the problem. But what if I was never the person? What if I was the product? I didn't sleep that night either. But the next morning, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered. Everett, a voice whispered. She's alive. But she's not safe. Then the line went dead. I was halfway to the airport when the phone call came through again. Same number. Same voice. But this time, it wasn't just a whisper. She's in Vancouver. New name. Safe house under contract from someone in compliance. You need to go. Now. Click. No further instructions. No number to call back. But it was enough. I changed direction. The entire flight to Canada felt like a hallucination. I was caught between the fantasy of reunion and the dread that I'd walk into another setup, another corporate trap. But there was no choice left. If there was even a chance she was alive, and not just a shadow moving through old surveillance footage, I had to take it. The safe house was a plain gray building near the water, hidden between a row of office suites. No signs. No cameras. Just a buzzer with no label. When I pressed it, the door opened with a soft click. And there she was. Madelyn. Older. Paler. Her hair tied back. No makeup. Eyes sunken, but burning with the same fire I remembered from years ago. The fire she used to light up pitch meetings and boardrooms and bedrooms with equal heat. But it wasn't a performance now. It was her, Raw, stripped of polish, exhausted, real. She didn't speak. She just stared, like I was part of some fever dream that had bled into reality. So I stepped inside. "I thought you were gone," I said, voice barely above a breath. "I almost was," she replied. We sat down, across from each other, at a rickety old kitchen table. No grand gestures. No swelling music. Just the faint hum of a radiator and years of silence pushing against the walls. "I saw the charter," I said after a long pause. "Your name was on it." Her face crumpled, and for a terrifying moment I thought she might deny everything. But instead, she nodded. "I was part of it," she whispered. "At first, but not the way he made it sound. I was told it was a stress tracking module. Anonymous data. I didn't know your name would be in it. I didn't know you would be used. Not until it was too late." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because by the time I realized the scope, they had already tagged you. And they were watching me. Every message I typed disappeared. Every drive I backed up, wiped. I tried to resign and they locked my accounts. Then I found out I was pregnant." Her voice cracked. I panicked. "I didn't know if it was safe. I left to protect you. And the baby." I stared at her, heart pounding. "But you lost it." She looked up, slowly. "No," she said. "I didn't. Time froze." "What?" "I let them believe I did. Reese was trying to isolate you. The pregnancy complicated everything. So I created a false record. I filed a fake termination form and leaked it through the internal HR loop. Then I disappeared." "Where's the child?" I asked, my voice already trembling. She stood and walked into the next room. When she returned, she was holding something. No, someone. A little girl. Dark hair, soft curls, wide green eyes, my eyes. "Her name is Elia," Madelyn said, tears streaking down her face. "She's 3, and she knows her father." I couldn't move. I couldn't even cry. I just knelt down, and Elia looked at me like she'd always known I was coming. That night, we didn't talk about lawsuits, or Reese, or the company, or the madness we'd survived. We talked about cartoons. About the sea lions on the dock. About the flavor of the peanut butter she liked. And when she fell asleep in my arms, I knew that nothing, not the betrayal, not the lies, not even the ghosts still lurking in the servers of Alturex, could take this away from me. Madelyn and I weren't the same people. We'd never go back to what we were. But maybe that was okay. Because what we had now wasn't a redo. It was a resurrection. Weeks later, after a confidential leak brought down 3 top execs at Alturex, including Reese, I got a message from Martin. 2 words. "You're clear." No retaliation. No loose ends. Just quiet freedom. Now, every morning, I make Elia breakfast. And sometimes, when she laughs, I forget everything that came before. I'm not the man I was. But for the first time in my life, I'm not haunted anymore. I'm home.